So Clothier Design Source, we are a factory. We manufacture apparel, and all of that's done in our building here in the US. And today, specifically, I'm going to be talking about fabric sourcing because this is one of the biggest pain points of getting your apparel line made. And it is so crucial that you have the right fabric for your garment to make sure it stands apart from everything else that's out there. So we're going to be talking about how to do that today, and some of the basics things you need to know before you can get started. So an overview of what you can expect to learn today will be, tips for sourcing the right fabric and trims, tips for getting fabric vendors to take you seriously, 6 basic questions to ask those fabric vendors, 5 characteristics of fabrics that you should know, 3 ways we can help you, and some vocab. So there's a ton of information you're going to get today. I'm going to move really fast because I know everyone's busy. We also teach an apparel academy. Really, it's kind of like an apparel boot camp. You come into our factory for one day. It's one day of classes. I teach 5 classes. It's very like an intensive on that 4-step process. And it's really about if you are starting a clothing line, thinking about starting a clothing line, or already have started a clothing line but feeling a little bit lost on the process, this is the best place to come and figure out how to get everything organized, how to make sure you're doing everything in order, and how to manage your factory and all of your partners that might be helping you with your clothing line. This slide, I put it right at the beginning because if you have to leave early, this is the slide I want you to know more than anything else, how to source your fabric. This is what you need to know. You need to communicate your inspiration with swatches from garments you already own. So what I'm talking about there is don't go to a fabric store to find fabric for your clothing line. That is a huge no-no because in the fabric stores, what they have are arts and crafts kind of fabric. They have quilters fabric. They have, things that aren't actually apparel grade fabric. So avoid the fabric store, first of all. What you want to do is you want to go into a retail store, you want to go into your closet, you want to go, basically you want to be looking at clothing for what kind of fabric that you think you want for your garment. So you want to go to a retail store, let's say you want to make a outerwear jacket. You want to go to a jacket store or to your closet and look at the fabrics, buy the jacket that you love the fabric on, and that is what you're going to use to communicate to any fabric vendor, fabric mill, fabric sourcing rep. That's what you're going to use to communicate what you want for your garment. That is the best way to do it. You do not want to read the label. You do not want to tell people what's on the label, and you'll find out more through the webinar why that doesn't work. But showing somebody the swatch or showing somebody the garment is the absolute best way to find the fabric that you love. Because you would have to go to university to go through a textile degree to be able to communicate what you love about that fabric and what it is about that fabric that you want. So just skip over all that and use a swatch or use a garment. That's the best way to do it. And again, if you don't remember anything else today, that is the main thing I want you to remember. And do not be afraid to cut it up. This is very important. So let's say you go buy, I was talking about outerwear. So let's say you go buy a outerwear jacket. Maybe it's a $200 jacket. That's kind of expensive. And I'm telling you to cut it up. And you're like, I don't want to do that. Actually, it's okay. Cut it up. Cut up that jacket. Cut it up into like maybe 8 by 8 inch, maybe 6 by 6 inch squares of fabric. And that way you're going to have several swatches that you can hand out to different fabric vendors of the kind of fabric you like and say, I want you to send me fabrics that are similar to this. So do not be afraid to cut it up. That is the best way to do it, because that way you'll have several swatches to communicate to different people when you're looking for that fabric, because it's really about casting a net and getting a lot of different things out there. Okay, so the next thing I want you to remember when you're looking for fabric is remember the vendors are here to sell you their fabric. Okay, this is really important. The fabric vendors are here to sell you their fabric. They do not have time to educate their customers. So preparation is the key. So let's say you get on Google and you're looking for fabric and you find a fabric mill and you get excited and you send them your swatch, and you don't know exactly what you're looking for. You don't know the right questions to ask. You don't understand how you get different colors. There's just so many things you need to know. And if that fabric vendor can kind of sniff out that you're asking a lot of questions that seem kind of like rookie questions, that fabric vendor is going to probably get less helpful, because they make their money, not because they're mean, but they make their money by selling fabric. When they run into a customer who knows what they're talking about and knows what questions to ask, they're a lot more likely to help you. If they have to run you through a whole education, kind of like I'm doing right now, they're going to step back and say, I don't really have time to educate my customers. I really only have time to actually answer their questions about the fabric and then sell it. So if you need some basic education, I'm glad you're here. This is where you should be. But you want to get that education down, just some basics, before you start engaging with them, because if any of you have done that so far, if you've engaged with any fabric reps or mills or vendors, you're going to find they probably weren't very helpful, because you might not have known enough. You might not have known the right questions to ask. So just remember that they're not mean or anything. It's just their time is spent by selling you fabric. Okay. So this is where you should start taking notes. So 6 questions to ask a fabric vendor and sound smart. So these are the things that you should start asking them once you've engaged with them. If you go to a fabric trade show, these are the questions you're going to want to ask. If you have contacted them over email, these are some of the questions you want to ask. If you're on the phone, these are some of the questions you want to ask. So number 1, always, if you've identified a fabric with them that you like, then what is the price? Of course, that's very important. What is the price per yard or meter or unit, depending on what you're looking at? What is the availability? Is it available now, or will it be made to order? What is the minimum order quantity? What is that per color, per fabric? That kind of thing. Minimum order quantity is also known as MOQ. If you want to sound really smart, you say, what are your MOQs? Minimum order quantities. That's very important, especially for people new starting out. If their minimum order quantity is 10,000 yards, you might not be prepared for that. You might want to find somebody that maybe 50 yards is their minimum order quantity. What are the timelines for receiving? So after you place an order for the fabric, how long is it going to be until you receive it? This is really important for you to know for your sampling process, for your manufacturing process, and your lead times overall. The other questions you might want to ask is, what is the country of origin? Just because you found a fabric source in the US might not mean that fabric was made in the US. So you do want to know where your fabric comes from, for some legal reasons, for your labeling, but also just might make a difference to you and your brand. And then you want to ask any other questions like, is sustainability important to you? What are the sustainable features, such as, is it recycled, biodegradable, organic? What are the technical features? That sixth question is more about, tell me about the features of the fabric. Anything technical, anything sustainable, anything like that. So those are the questions you want to ask, and they're going to start to take you seriously right off the bat. I know a few people have joined a little late, so I just want to mention, feel free to ask questions as we go, and you can use the chat feature or the Q&A feature. Okay, so this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So there are 5 characteristics when it comes to fabric. I was mentioning earlier that you'd probably have to go through through a textile degree if you really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty way of talking about fabric. But these are the 5 things, like if you come to us with fabric sourcing project, these are the 5 determinations we immediately make when we're looking at your fabric or looking for fabric for you. So number 1, what is the content of the fabric? Everyone's familiar with this because, as you can see, this logo on this label on my screen, it says 97% cotton and 3% spandex. So everyone's familiar with that. This is only around 15% of the information that you need. Looking for some samples here. So I've got some samples on the rack here. So like these are a pair of men's underwear. Okay, this is a polyester fabric. It has some spandex in it as well. This fabric, or this is a jacket. I don't know if you can tell what it is. It's a outerwear jacket, but this is also polyester spandex. So if you came to me and said, I want, 90% polyester, 10% spandex, I could say, oh, you might want some underwear fabric or you might want jacket fabric. So that content is so little information that we need to be able to find the right fabric for you, that it's still an important part of the information, but it definitely never, ever, ever email a fabric vendor or ask somebody that with only that information. You don't ever want to say, I'm looking for 90% polyester, 10% spandex. You never want to say that, because if that's all the information you have, first of all, red flag, you're a newbie. And that means they're going to have to spend a lot of time with you and you're going to be a lot of work. And number 2 is nobody can really find fabric with just that amount of information. So I'm going to share with you the rest of the information that you need to know before the right fabric can be found. All right, so number 2, are you looking for a knit or a woven fabric? That, if you don't remember anything else from these characteristics, remember that. You want to know if it's a knit or a woven. So I'm going to talk about the differences between that if you are not familiar. So in most cases, if it's a knit fabric, it stretches. So again, let's go back to these 2 samples. This is men's underwear. It's a knit fabric. I take the fabric and I stretch it. You can see right there as I'm doing on the screen. Stretching, so that's knit. It's really as easy as that. Woven fabric will not have stretch, or it will have very little stretch if it has some spandex. So let me show you this jacket. So do you see how I'm pulling it? I'm pulling it pretty much as hard as I can. It has a little tiny bit of stretch, but that is a woven fabric. So in most cases, it isn't 100%, but in most cases, that is the easiest way to tell if you are looking for a knit or a woven fabric. So wovens are generally dressier, or they're outerwear. I've got another example back here of a men's trouser. That is a woven. a woven fabric. So that would kind of maybe go into the dressier category. It's less casual. Knitwear is generally more casual and more activewear. These aren't hard, fast rules, but this is just generally, if you're not sure if you're looking for a knit or a woven, are you in that dressier or outerwear category, or are you in that casual or activewear category? And that should help you determine if you're looking for a knit or a woven. Okay, characteristic number 3. If you come to us with a fabric sourcing project, we have a whole fabric sourcing department that can help you. And these are some of the things we determine. We look at what's the content, is it a knit or a woven? And then we look at what kind of knit or woven. So there are hundreds, probably thousands of different kinds of knit or wovens. I've got some pictures here on the screen. So at the bottom, got a picture of a jersey knit and a rib knit. This is just to show you, this is really kind of magnified, but it's really to kind of show you the textural difference. When you start changing the type of knit that you want, it really changes the look. It changes the look and the feel. So we're determining that pretty early on, what kind of knit you want. And the same thing for the wovens. Okay, so number 4. So this is about the weight of the fabric. So when we're looking for fabric for you, we're looking at, is it a heavy fabric? Is it a lightweight fabric? And then we're starting to determine really how many grams per meter squared is the way the industry talks about it, or how many ounces per linear yard are the 2 ways they talk about it. I put some extreme cases on the slide here. We have this lightweight fabric. You can see it's very see-through. And we have a heavyweight fabric. It's heavier. It's beefier. It has more weight to it. And these 2 fabrics, interestingly enough, are the same content. They're the same. They're both wovens. They're both the same type of woven, but yet the weight is different. So you can see how important that weight is to what your end result fabric is. Okay, so the 5th characteristic that we look for when we're looking for fabric is the gauge of the yarn. I show an extreme example again here on the bottom, but these are both linen fabrics. This yellow swatch here is a smaller gauge fabric, a smaller gauge yarn. So it just means tinier yarns get woven together to make the fabric. The swatch over here on the right is bigger yarns get woven together to make the fabric. If you can imagine feeling these fabrics in your hand, this one is more supple, it's more pliable, it's more drapey, and then this one is more boardy, more scratchy, more stiff. If you were to make like a dress out of it, it would just kind of, look like it would just come down straight and it wouldn't have any give. That's an extreme example of what happens as the gauge of yarn gets smaller. So we have over 250 fabric mills that we work with worldwide. So we work with fabric mills here in the US, we work with people in China, Italy, India, Taiwan. Those are kind of the major. Turkey, we do some in Central America. So we have a lot of sources. We have over 2,000 fabrics in our library here from all these fabric mills. And we can work with you. So if you do need some help, we'd love to work with you. So an example of something we've developed in the past is we had somebody come to us. They were creating a baby garment. They wanted the baby garment to have shea butter and aloe infused into the fabric, that when the baby was wearing the garment, it was actually softening their skin. It didn't exist yet. It wasn't on the market. And we actually worked with our fabric mill partners, worked with microencapsulation technology, and we were able to develop a fabric that had shea butter infused into it, and it lasted over 20 washes. So as the baby was wearing the garment, it was actually softening their skin. So again, the sky's the limit on what can be done in the apparel industry and in the fabric industry. It's just kind of knowing how to work with those vendors, how to talk to them, how to get things done. And if you're doing something that advanced, I definitely recommend finding a partner like us to help you with it. 3 ways we can help. So you can get in touch. We do free consults, no problem. We just we know what questions to ask to get enough information from you so we can put together a plan and see how we can help you and see if we can help you. Number 2, join the apparelacademy.com. So we do have an academy coming up. And then join our Facebook group too. And we have a lot of stuff going on there. So another way we can help is have us help you source your fabrics. Again, make an appointment today, chat. You can use the chat feature towards the end. If you do want to talk to someone today, I can certainly get you hooked up. But again, we work with over 200 mills around the world. We know what's out there. We know your options. So if you've got a problem you're trying to solve, or some kind of fabric you're trying to look for, or you're not even sure what kind of fabric to look for, if we start working with you and understand your brand, understand your project, understand what your goal is, we'll definitely be able to pull together some options. And we can, generally when we do fabric sourcing, we're showing you at least 20 options, 10 to 20, depending on what it is, that we think are going to be really great for you. We're going to show you the different pricing structures. We're going to show you the different minimum structures. So we're really going to lay it out there for you so you can see, pretty quickly what we think the options for you are to develop your apparel. And if you like learning and you're looking for more information and you're hungry and you're thinking about starting a line, but you're just not quite sure where to start and how to go about it, we do have the Apparel Academy. So we've got one coming up May 18th, which is actually coming up quicker than you think. It is in our new factory here in St. Paul, Minnesota. The weather is going to be good. There will be no snowstorms in Minnesota then. So, a lot of people fly in for those events. It's just a one-day event. You can schedule a consult with one of our design managers and come in for that one-day event. You get a tour of the factory. I teach 5 classes on the 4-step process, and it really just kind of is like a boot camp of this is how it works, this is how you get it done, and really helps a lot of people determine, okay, I'm gung-ho, I'm going for this, or I need to step back and slow it down a little bit. I'm just going to start with step 1. But it really helps you understand how to avoid mistakes, save money, and get on the right track.